Trump was posting Trump was right about everything. He was posting memes that say majority of Americans believe the United States is on the right track, which is approval numbers from the Reuters Ipsos poll showing his approval of Iran's uranium stockpile. Both the Vice President J.D. Vance
just dropped a bombshell. When asked if Iran's nuclear program was obliterated, he replied, "The goal was to bury the uranium." Bury it? What does that even mean? And how did we go from burying uranium to missiles raining down? Let's unpack this madness. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now back to the video. Trump couldn't contain himself. He hopped on his favorite social media platform and went straight into victory mode, posting in all caps, of course.
Absolutely false. Yesterday, Donald Trump got his worst, dipping to just 41% in his disapproval, almost hitting about 60. United States officials are conceding that they don't know the fate, and Rafael Grossi, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency,
Ceasefire deal secured, he bragged as if he had just solved world peace from the comfort of one of his golf courses. To really hammer it home, he shared a picture of himself grinning next to an American flag, as if that alone should convince everyone watching. The problem? The rest of the world wasn't celebrating. While Trump was fist pumping and acting like the host of some reality show finale, missiles were still dropping, and not in some vague far-off way. We're talking explosions lighting up the skies of major cities just hours after his so-called deal was announced. Iran, for its part, wasted no time setting the record straight. Their officials, they outright denied signing on to any ceasefire. In fact, they almost seemed confused by Trump's claim, as if they woke up, saw his posts, and thought, what on earth is he talking about now? But confusion quickly turned to disgust as Iranian leaders called his claims baseless propaganda, accusing him of trying to fake a diplomatic breakthrough. And honestly, it's hard to argue with their point. While missiles struck Tel Aviv and Tehran ramped up its rhetoric, Trump's fantasy ceasefire felt like it had been stitched together out of the kind of bravado only he could muster up. It was like someone trying to duct tape over a wildfire while yelling, "It's all fixed." On the ground, it was anything but fixed. Israeli residents scrambled to shelters as Iranian missiles struck homes and schools, leaving behind horrific images of rubble and ash. Meanwhile, in Iran, the skies were ablaze from retaliatory strikes by Israeli forces, with smoke billowing over major infrastructure sites. Somehow, Trump decided this was the perfect backdrop for a social media victory lap, and he didn't stop at all-caps declarations. Oh no, true to form, he peppered in visuals to up the spectacle. A fist pump here, a tense-looking Oval Office shot there, and for the grand finale, yes, you guessed it, there was a flag-kissing moment that somehow managed to feel both cheesy and utterly baffling in the middle of an escalating war. It's not just the gap between Trump's posts and reality that's shocking, it's the outright stubbornness of his fantasy world. While journalists covered the devastation live, showing shattered hospitals and parents carrying wounded children through crumbling streets, Trump kept doubling down. Anyone else might have paused at the backlash, maybe toned it down a notch, but not Donnie Deals. He seemed completely unbothered, or maybe just completely detached. And why should he worry? For him, the appearance of action has always been more valuable than action itself. Declaring victory was easier than facing the brutally complicated truth. There was no deal, no ceasefire, no agreement, just more destruction. What makes the era of Trump TV so maddening is the way it mixes absurdity with tragedy. You can't help but laugh at the sheer audacity of a man standing in front of the world, claiming to make history, while the region, the world really, descends into chaos. And yet the consequences couldn't be more serious. Each missile that hit an Israeli city added to the growing death toll, while retaliatory strikes on Iran targeted nuclear facilities and key military hubs. But if you were watching Trump's feed, you'd assume he'd just won a Nobel Prize for war-ending diplomacy. It's all theater, a reality show where people's lives are just props in the background. Of course, there's a reason this matters beyond just Trump being Trump. Leaders shape perception, which in turn shapes response. His insistence on dangling a victory narrative in front of his followers created confusion, not just for Americans, but for the players involved in the conflict itself. In Iran, hardliners used Trump's false claim to rally their own base, calling the United States delusional while escalating their missile strikes. Let that sink in while we digest the fact that US officials now admit they have no idea where it went. And that's not even the cherry on top. It's been suggested that Trump's constant threats, him waving around promises to obliterate Iran's nuclear program with the kind of swagger you'd expect from an action movie protagonist, might have actually helped Iran. Yeah, you heard that right. Trump's bluster likely rang some alarm bells over in Tehran, giving them a heads up to secure their uranium and gear up for potential strikes. So while Trump was bragging about taking control, Iran was playing a real-life shell game, shuffling their materials out of harm's way. But wait, according to Trump and his loyal talking heads, it's all fine because they already totally obliterated Iran's nuclear program. Obliterated, really? Because moving uranium out of a facility and probably getting it closer to weapons-grade material doesn't scream obliterated to me. JD Vance's statement about burying the uranium takes this confusion to a whole new level. What does that even mean in practical terms? Did they think if they shoved it under some dirt and put up a do not dig sign, the problem would magically go away? Vance tried to clarify that the focus was on stopping enrichment and conversion into weapons-grade material, but if that's the case, why'd they let the uranium slip into the ether like a bad magician's trick? Here's the kicker. Trump's claims were never about real solutions. They were about optics. He knew his supporters wanted to hear something bold, powerful, and decisive, so that's exactly what he gave them. Without the messy follow-through, of course. Declaring that Iran's nuclear capability had been wiped out was easier than explaining why enriched uranium was reportedly on the move. And while the world scrambled to figure out where Iran's nuclear material ended up, Trump stuck to his victory narrative like gum on a shoe. JD Vance, meanwhile, threw out his ambiguous bury the uranium soundbite, which not only lacked clarity, but also raised more questions than answers. What's even scarier is the possibility that Iran now has a head start. If reports are accurate and they've safeguarded their uranium, they're in a better position than ever to accelerate their nuclear weapons program. That 60% enriched uranium they moved is dangerously close to the 90% mark needed for weapons. Combine that with their advanced centrifuge capabilities, and Iran has a very real shot at crossing the nuclear finish line. But instead of addressing this impending crisis, Trump's team continues to parade the whole mission accomplished banner like this is some kind of sitcom and not a geopolitical disaster. The irony of it all is staggering. While Trump was posting celebratory selfies and clinging to his ceasefire fantasy, the people who were actually paying attention could see the wheels coming off in real time. Iran didn't disappear into a puff of smoke just because Trump said so, and now their potential for creating nuclear weapons has only grown stronger. If all this sounds like the opposite of obliterating a nuclear program, you're not wrong. It's worse than a failure. It's a misstep that could have catastrophic consequences down the line. Think about it. Iran is closer than ever to becoming a nuclear-armed state, and we're left with a murky understanding of what actually happened. From the beginning, this was never about solving real problems. It was about selling a narrative. Trump's social media posts, JD Vance's puzzling remarks, the whole bury the uranium nonsense. It was all spin, and that spin might have allowed Iran to get the upper hand and push their nuclear ambitions further than they ever could have under real scrutiny. The truth here isn't just murky, it's downright unsettling. We don't know where the uranium is, we don't know how far Iran has advanced their capabilities, and we don't know what their next move will be. What we do know, though, is this. Trump's self-proclaimed victory might go down as one of the biggest strategic blunders in recent memory. The missiles may have stopped falling temporarily, but the long-term consequences of this botched nuclear policy are terrifying. So let's ask the real question here. What happens when even Trump's most loyal supporters realize their leader's promises are unraveling faster than an off-brand rug? Because while the nuclear situation is chaos, the most immediate fallout might be happening right at home. And trust me, that's a story worth sticking around for. Trump's supporters once saw him as the guy who'd shake up Washington, tear down the establishment, and, most importantly, keep America out of endless foreign entanglements. America First wasn't just a slogan, it was a promise to end end wars, focus on the people at home, and stop the country from playing Middle East referee. But lately, even the most red hat wearing, flag wave tweeting MAGA diehards are starting to squint at Trump's actions like, wait, this isn't what we signed up for. Take the Middle East, for example. Trump's approach has been anything but pulling back. His involvement in escalating the conflict, combined with talk of obliterating nuclear programs and puffing his chest out at Iran, feels eerily like, well, every other president that Trump used to criticize. Weren't we supposed to stop trying to fix the Middle East? Weren't we supposed to be done dragging the US into conflicts that do nothing for average Americans? These were promises, clear, emphatic promises that played like a greatest hits album to his MAGA base. And yet, here we are, missiles flying, nuclear materials unaccounted for, and Trump parading himself online as if controversy is just another marketing tool for his next rally. Of course, the chaos isn't just limited to missile strikes. On the home front, Trump's focus on targeting migrants, not at the border, but at places like Home Depot and construction sites, has left plenty of MAGA supporters scratching their heads. Joe Rogan even chimed in, saying, "This is not what people signed up for." And when someone as loud and influential as Rogan starts questioning what's going on, you know there's a ripple effect. His fan base might not overlap perfectly with Trump's, but they share some values, especially on things like the government staying out of people's lives. Rogan's concern underscores a broader sentiment that some of Trump's recent policies feel less like draining the swamp and more like a fish out of water flopping around. A lot of his base wanted policies that felt bold and decisive. What they're getting instead, at least in Rogan's eyes, is something unfocused and maybe even hypocritical. And here's where the PR machine hits its awkward moments. Typically, when Trump's in trouble or under fire, he comes out swinging with a bigger-than-life spectacle to rally the crowd. He fist pumps at rallies, hugs the flag like he's about to propose to it, and posts his signature all-caps declarations. But in the middle of an actual global crisis, when people are dying on the ground and the world's on edge, this self-promotion game looks less like showmanship and more like tone-deaf comedy. Imagine missile strikes lighting up Gaza, world leaders scrambling to control the fallout, and there's Trump grinning in a picture with the caption, "Total Victory." The man might get laughs from his die-hard fans, but even they have to feel the cringe creeping in when the stakes are this high. Critics have started pulling at a thread that MAGA loyalists are usually reluctant to tug on. The idea that Trump's deal-maker persona, the image his entire brand is built on, might just be a facade. His claim of brokering a ceasefire falls apart under even the tiniest bit of scrutiny. The violence didn't ease up, Iran didn't agree to anything, and the region didn't suddenly turn into a paradise of handshakes and peace talks. It's becoming harder for Trump to sell the narrative that he's the great deal negotiator when people can see the deal splintering in real time. And frankly, it's not a good look when your supporters have to sit there and wonder if they're being played by the guy who promised them he wasn't like anyone else. And then there's the irony, the absolute jaw-dropping irony of Trump pulling this act on the very people who stood by him no matter what. MAGA supporters are fiercely loyal, but that loyalty came from a belief that Trump wasn't just another politician. They viewed him as someone who said what he meant and meant what he said. Bring the troops home, focus on rebuilding America, stop the endless cycle of war profiteering. Those weren't empty slogans, they were the foundation of his grassroots appeal. And now, they're watching a man escalate conflict abroad while grandstanding at home, promoting himself like the war is just a ratings spike. Some of Trump's longtime supporters are starting to ask tough questions. They're looking at his emphasis on total victory as missiles fall and wondering if it's all for show. They're seeing headlines about sketchy uranium movements, stalled peace talks, and bizarre JD Vance sound bites and thinking, this isn't why I voted for him. Even Trump's rallies, normally a place for unconditional adoration, are starting to show tiny cracks. You get the sense that some people are standing in the crowd, flags in hand, muttering under their breath about how America First has somehow turned into Trump first. This unraveling shows hints of something bigger. Trump's political strength has always come from his ability to spin chaos into loyalty. The wilder things got, the more his fans loved him for owning the libs or fighting the media. But this time, the chaos may be hitting a little too close to home. You can't laugh off missile strikes, and you can't ignore policies that feel wildly out of step with the promises that brought people into the movement. Trump's once ironclad connection to his base might not be as sturdy as it seems. Whether or not this rift grows larger remains to be seen. For now, the uneasy chuckles and hesitant claps are starting to creep into the MAGA crowd, signaling that the good old Trump show might be losing its luster. And if even his most loyal supporters are starting to feel the cracks in the MAGA shield, what happens when those cracks finally give way? Missile strikes, nuclear uncertainty, and Trump's victory parade create a picture that's as absurd as it is dangerous. His ceasefire fantasy wasn't just disconnected from reality, it highlighted the costs of empty rhetoric. Real leadership doesn't come from photo ops or all-caps tweets. It demands solutions, transparency, and a grip on actual events. With Iran's uranium unaccounted for and violence raging, it's clear this chaos isn't over. The question now isn't just how this conflict ends, it's whether Trump's base will stick by him when the consequences of his actions become impossible to ignore. And let's face it, they'll have to.